The morning Daniel Carter received the marriage papers, it felt as if the entire world had clenched its fist around his life. He stood in the dim kitchen of his small rented house, staring at the documents spread across the table, documents that would bind him to a woman he had never met, a woman they said had been paralyzed in an accident, a woman whose family demanded he marry her as repayment for a debt he never meant to create. Daniel's breath shuddered as he looked at his sleeping young daughter Lily in the next room. Life had already been unbearably hard. Now it was tightening its hold in ways he hadn't seen coming. But he would do anything, to protect his daughter from losing the only roof they had left. That was the hook life threw at him, a forced marriage and a stranger's broken world placed in his hands. If you believe in kindness, in unexpected miracles, in second chances that life quietly sends when we least expect them, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Daniel's story began long before the marriage contract, though. He had once been a construction worker with a promising future, but after the company he worked for collapsed and his sick mother needed costly treatment, he found himself borrowing money without fully understanding the people he was borrowing from. When his mother passed, the debts remained, cold, heavy, and unforgiving. And now those same people had offered him a grim escape, clear the remainder of what he owed by becoming a caretaker husband to the daughter of a wealthy but ruthless man. That daughter was Emily Hale, paralyzed from the waist down after a tragic car accident that took her mobility and shattered her engagement only months before the wedding. Her father believed she needed someone steady, someone gentle, someone to ensure she was never alone. But what Emily herself wanted, no one bothered to ask. The first time Daniel met her, she sat by a large window in a silent, echoing mansion that felt more like a fortress than a home. She was pale, heartbreakingly beautiful, with shadows under her eyes like bruises from endless nights of unshed tears. Her wheelchair was positioned so she could see the garden, but her posture revealed she had long given up noticing it. When Daniel entered, she barely lifted her gaze. She didn't resist the idea of the marriage, nor did she welcome it. She simply seemed tired of fighting battles no one understood. Daniel approached her with the gentleness he used when waking Lily from her nightmares. He didn't know how to treat a woman so obviously wounded, so he treated her as a person instead, something no one else seemed to do. She didn't look at him, but she spoke softly, saying she didn't want a caretaker disguised as a husband. Daniel understood. He didn't want to be that either. But life rarely dealt choices wrapped in kindness. The wedding was small and quiet, almost secretive, held in a sunlit corner of the estate garden. Emily didn't look at him the entire ceremony. Daniel didn't blame her. He felt like an intruder in her grief, a stranger stitched into the seams of her fate by other people's decisions. Lily, wearing a dress too big for her, held Daniel's hand with hope shining on her face, unaware of the complexity grown-ups carried like armor. Emily's room was on one wing of the mansion, Daniel and Lily stayed in the other. Days fell into a rhythm of silence, punctuated only by the clicking of Emily's wheelchair wheels on the polished floors or the soft voice of her nurse. Daniel helped where he could, lifting things, preparing tea, making sure the halls were clear. He didn't impose. He simply existed quietly beside her world. Emily rarely spoke, and when she did, her words were wrapped in resignation. She had once been a dancer, she revealed one evening, her eyes unfocused as if recalling a dream belonging to someone else. Her former fiancé had loved her legs, she said bitterly, loved how they moved, how they made her beautiful. And when they stopped moving, he walked away, taking her sense of worth with him. Daniel listened, not because he had to, but because he found a kind of fragile strength in her vulnerability. Emily, despite her pain, carried herself with a quiet dignity that humbled him. She was not fragile, she had simply been abandoned at the worst moment of her life. Daniel knew that feeling too well. Weeks slipped by, and Emily slowly began noticing the little things Daniel did. Not the grand gestures, but the subtle kindnesses he didn't realize she was observing. How he covered Lily with a blanket when she fell asleep on the couch. How he read quietly in the evenings to fill the silence that clung to the house. How he repaired the broken garden lights so Emily could enjoy the soft glow outside her window at night. These were small acts, but to a woman accustomed to being treated like a burden, they felt like warmth she had forgotten to recognize. The change was gradual. Emily began leaving her room more often. She started having tea where Daniel and Lily could join her. She still didn't look him in the eyes often, but sometimes, when Lily giggled, Emily would smile, thin and fleeting, but real. Lily, who had a natural gift for dissolving walls, began bringing her drawings to Emily, proudly announcing each color choice. Emily thanked her, always gently, always with a voice that wavered between strength and sorrow. Then came the night that changed everything. A storm had rolled through the estate, darkening the sky and rattling the windows. Lily, terrified of thunder, crawled into Daniel's arms and refused to sleep. Daniel held her as he always did, whispering reassurances. Emily watched from her doorway, her eyes softening as she saw a father's love in its purest form. She asked Daniel to bring Lily to her room so she could help soothe her. He hesitated, unsure if she truly wanted the closeness, but she nodded firmly. Lily curled into Emily's side as Daniel lowered her onto the bed. Emily stroked the little girl's hair with hands that trembled, not from weakness but from the unfamiliarity of being needed. For a moment, the storm outside faded, leaving only the small, fragile warmth of a family learning how to exist together. That night, when Lily finally drifted to sleep, Emily whispered that she hadn't held a child since the accident. She admitted she had been afraid of failing, of dropping, of being useless. Daniel gently told her she wasn't useless. Not even close. She stared at him then, truly stared, and in her eyes he saw a flicker of something he had never seen in her before, longing. Longing for connection. Longing for life. Longing for something beyond the chair she'd been imprisoned in. Days turned into a quiet blossoming of hope. Emily began attending her physical therapy sessions with renewed commitment. She tried harder, pushed further, even attempted movements that left her sweating and shaking. The therapists couldn't explain the sudden change in her determination. But Daniel knew. Something inside her was waking up again. And then came the moment that would rewrite the entire story. One evening, after a long therapy session, Emily asked Daniel to take her to the garden. She wanted to feel the night air, she said. The family had left the mansion for the weekend, leaving the estate oddly peaceful. Daniel wheeled her to the garden, where fairy lights glowed gently. The air was cool, brushing against Emily's skin like a blessing. She asked him to sit beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Emily confessed that she had begun to feel something she never thought she would again, something warm, terrifying, and impossible. She said she didn't expect him to feel the same. She didn't expect anything from him. She simply wanted him to know. Daniel's heart tightened. He had tried so hard to keep emotional distance, to remind himself he was in this role by force. But the truth was undeniable. Somewhere along the way, Emily had become more than a responsibility, more than a quiet presence in the halls. She had become someone he cared for deeply. He reached for her hand. She allowed it. And for the first time, she didn't look away. Daniel leaned in and pressed the gentlest kiss to her forehead, a kiss filled with gratitude, respect, and a tenderness he didn't know he was capable of expressing. Emily's breath caught. Something inside her, something buried under months of grief and resignation, ignited. She whispered that she wanted to try something she hadn't tried in months. Daniel didn't understand at first. But then he saw her hands gripping the sides of the wheelchair. Her body trembled. Her arms shook. Her face twisted in determination. Daniel reached forward quickly, terrified she would fall, but she stopped him with a look so fierce he froze. She pushed again. Her legs, lifeless for so long, trembled faintly, just barely, but undeniably alive. Daniel's eyes widened, disbelief washing over him. Emily gasped, tears streaming down her face as the muscles responded to her will, however weakly. And then, in the most fragile, breathtaking moment Daniel had ever witnessed, Emily lifted herself an inch, just one trembling, miraculous inch, before collapsing back into the chair, sobbing. But that inch meant everything. It meant hope. It meant life. It meant love reaching deeper than despair. If this moment touches your heart even a little, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Stories like this deserve a place in the world, and your support helps them find the hearts that need them most. Emily's progress only grew from there. Day after day, she fought with renewed passion, fueled not by some fairy tale miracle but by the possibility of a future, one she wanted, one she could reach for. Daniel stood by her side through every triumph and every setback. Lily cheered for her as if watching a superhero. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, Emily regained the faintest control over muscles declared hopeless by doctors. It wasn't a sudden recovery. It wasn't magic. It was love. Love that healed in inches, not leaps. Months later, Emily was able to stand with assistance, her legs trembling but her spirit steady. Daniel held her as she took her first steps, not graceful, not strong, but full of purpose. She cried into his chest, thanking him for giving her something to fight for again. Daniel held her tighter, overwhelmed by the journey they had survived together. On the anniversary of their forced marriage, Emily walked, unsupported, though only for a moment, into Daniel's arms. This time, the kiss they shared was not gentle or hesitant. It was a declaration, a promise, a beginning built from everything broken and remade. Before the story ends, I want to ask you something special. Comment below what part touched you the most or made you pause and feel something. Your words matter more than you know. Daniel, Lily, and Emily didn't become a perfect family overnight. Real love isn't perfect, but they became each other's place of healing, proof that sometimes life writes its best chapters through impossible circumstances. Emily never returned fully to the life she once had. She created a new one richer, deeper, and braver. And Daniel, once forced into a union, discovered the kind of love he didn't know existed. It didn't come through magic. It came through patience, kindness, hope, and the courage to believe that even broken things can bloom again.